Thank you very, very much, Shaoli, for inviting me. Thank you, Globin School, for this. Uh, yes, I have made some sort of a name on this field of leadership, but it's much of what I've actually learned from Indians like the late Sri Pritam Singh, a lovely person, and the people that gravitate around him like Asha Brandarkar and Subir Verma, and more recently Subrat and Mohwa. Uh, Indians can learn from the Indians much better than from me. What I want to bring to you is a Western perspective. Because you see, the Western companies have become so enormous that they have spread all over the world, and they carry with them the wisdom of what works well for them, mostly in the USA. But they are not really as wise as they should be, and perhaps some of those techniques might not work as well in other countries like India or Brazil or Mexico or China, for example. Right? So this is what I have been discussing. It's this intercultural aspect of leadership. What works well for one country and its people might not work as well for other people. So this is why you have to stand on your tiptoes and think for yourself. What I'm going to bring to you today is a distillation of my recent thought about leadership and culture, and what works well and what works less well. So I'm going to discuss with you three topics. One is the need to reconcile the private and the public tension. Now, I'm not referring here to government and private companies, but the private attitude of you and your family with regards to how you behave in the external world, in politics, in war, in business, or whatever. That is a reconciliation that is inherent to the question that we have to discuss today on leadership and intercultural leadership. Then there is another topic which I believe is crucial. The companies are not lasting as long as one would need them in order to fulfill their promise. They're disappearing faster every year. And what's the purpose of setting them up if they're going to disappear? And the last thing is, what are we going to do with our young people? Until when are we going to ask them to wait until their time comes? And by then, they may be bored and they may not want it anymore. And we have wasted perhaps the most fruitful years. So these are the three topics that I wish to discuss with you. The tension between the private and the public, the staying power of organizations, and the waiting line. Now, I have learned a lot from geography. If you look at that map there, that's the river Amazon. The land is flat, so it meanders a lot in order to fulfill its meaning, getting to the Atlantic Ocean. And it has many tributaries, affluents along the way. And all these rivers cover different lands, and they carry with it the silt of those lands, the gist of them, the essence of those lands. This is what culture is all about. When a river gets to the Atlantic Ocean, it carries with it the silt that it has gathered along its way. And with cultures, it's similar. People intermingle, and they bring into their cultural river their own cultures. And this is what we have to understand. What we call today Western leadership has three main affluents: the ancient Jews, the ancient Greeks, and the ancient Romans. And they have folded into a river that we call the Western culture. Now, because the Jews stayed a lot to themselves, because you could only be a Jew if you were born from a Jewish mother, this meant that the Jewish religion did not spread as fast as others we have come to know. And on the other hand, the Greeks bestowed all their recognition on how how good you were in your public life. You see, the recognition came from beyond yourself. It was attributed to you by the surrounding people. And that was secured in politics, in war, in arts, in thought, in philosophy. And the Romans picked up this, and they continued with the Greek tradition, expecting that others will tell you how good you are. And therefore, while the Jews remained to themselves, bound to their families, cherishing their wives, the Greeks and the Romans set out for war. So this is why we get Justinian in the Byzantine Empire of the Eastern Catholicism. And this is why the Pope, Urbanus II, got all its warring kings to go out and take Jerusalem again in order to divert from the internal worrying of in Europe and conquer new lands and spread Catholicism. So this idea that you do not stay within yourself and you have to go out in order to secure recognition, has driven most of the leaders in the Western world and the companies that they lead. This is why we get the tradition of cherishing strategy, which is a Greek word. And it percolated into Europe and then into America. And we have all these worrying jargons into business, like price wars, company, assailant, business intelligence. All these terms came out from the armies in fighting. And we have incorporated them into the business jargon. Excuse me. And this is what makes the business management and the type of leadership that we have today. It's expansionist. It believes that if it doesn't expand, it will get nowhere or it will disappear. So this is what we have when we ask the American business leaders, middle management to the top, and Thunderbird University asked 3,000 of them in the US, which are the leaders that you most admire? And of course, these came up. For good reasons. I mean, they lead enormous companies, very successful companies, whether it's Apple, Tesla, JP Morgan, the bank, or IBM, you name it. These guys deserve the recognition that they have secured from. But this interesting work from Thunderbird International Business School asked them as well, why do you admire them? And this is interesting because the reason that they are admired may vary, and this is what we need to figure out. If we're going to reconcile this, we must understand that what made the Christian world in that all those affluents, the Jews, the Greeks and the Romans, and the Greeks and the Romans got together into Christianity, then what we have to secure is some kind of reconciliation between the private sphere, what I do at home, the cherishing of my family, the rituals that the Jews performed in the home and not in the temple, and this outward going life of the Christians, which seeks honor, war, and politics. This is the tension between the public and the private that I want to address. Because when you ask all those admirable leaders, why are they so cherished? And there are a couple of dimensions like trust, vision, customers, employees, innovation. Those are the reasons why they are admired. And here you have the rank. So for example, Buffett comes first in trust, in vision, in customers, but Buffett is very well known. He's old, he's over 80, so he's been around for very long. He's very good at leading and succeeding. And this is why he's recognized by everybody. So younger leaders like Cook and Musk here, they are admired for different reasons. Cook is second in trust, Bezos is second in vision, Cook again is second in customers, Musk is second in recognition by the employees, and so on and so forth. What I want to bring to you today is a breakdown of this analysis, because if we need to reconcile, we must understand that some of those traits are related to the public and the private. So let's forget about trust for the moment and concentrate on vision. Vision is external. You have to foresee what's going to happen and get ready for it. Yet your relationship to customers is internal. It's like your family. The same with employees. On the other hand, innovation is public, because if you foresee the future and you have to get ready for it, then again, the external is the driver. And social responsibility, is it external or is it internal? It's hard to tell. But really, I would not trust somebody who says that they are concerned with the climate, but they behave differently in private. So really, the social responsibility has to do with what Shaori was mentioning, for example, empathy and trust. So you see, these people, leaders, very well-known business leaders, are rightly admired for very interesting and real reasons. But you see, you also deal with them from a certain perspective, public and private. This is why we have in the public side innovation and business. Innovation and vision. And you see, these two, Bezos and Cook, will change when we take the private perspective. Yes, you see, people admire the same for different reasons. When they consider the private outlook, like for example, relationship with customers, the relation between private and public is inverted. So there is a tension, yes, between the public perception and the private one. And this is what we need to reconcile. And this reconciliation has been taking perhaps 30 years. It began with the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. But it continued. So for the last 30 years, we've been dealing with this. It's no longer perceived as important to compete, because this competition is a zero-sum game. We beat the others, yes, but what happens to the climate? So we must understand, and this is what has been growing in the last 30 years, that we are in it together. And we have to see business as an ecosystem. We are related to participants, to value exchange, to industries, to the complexity of technology. All this is part of our business. And then in 2009, we had the first climate reunion sponsored by the United Nations. And since then, Greta has become world famous. So see, this has been a movement for the last 30 years. There has been a transition trying to reconcile the public and the private. Business leaders stem from a tradition of cultural tradition that reflects the Jews, the Greeks, and the Romans in the Western tradition. And that tradition has been perhaps represented by Christianity. And Christianity has been expansionist. And in this expansionism, it has led many countries into war. And this is why you get so many warlike messages embedded into the jargon of business. But it should temper away.